My name is Seren, and I can practically set my watch to the moment it happens each summer. It begins with a group text from my mother Lorraine, a photo of the beach house. The caption always reads the same: "Counting down the days. Can't wait for another unforgettable family trip." There's always a string of heart emojis and a comment from my sister Celeste beneath it. Something like, "Just bought new swimwear for the kids." They're so excited. I stare at the image a few seconds longer than I should. Wide wraparound porch, ocean view hammocks, enough lounge chairs to seat a wedding party. I know the house. My mother rents the same one every year. 5 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, bonus attic space, and a separate guest suite. And yet somehow, every year there's not enough room for me, Calla, and Reed. Celeste brings her husband, her 4 kids, and even their part-time nanny. No one bats an eye. The children need their space, my mother always says, as if Calla and Reed don't qualify as children. As if mine aren't part of this family. This year, I didn't wait for the call. It came anyway. Seren, darling, Lorraine's voice crooned through the phone, warm and performative. "I just didn't want you to feel left out when the photos start going around." The house was already full by the time we confirmed with Celeste and Thomas's parents are joining this year. I don't bother arguing anymore. I just nod, then lie to my children. "We're doing something special this summer," I tell Calla as I brush her hair. "Something just for us." She smiles, trusting me. But I know the look she'll give me when her cousins come back with sunburns and seashells, telling stories about paddleboards and boogie boards, about crab boils and treasure hunts. I know the ache of sitting at the holiday table months later, watching Reed's face fall when no one remembers he wasn't there. I used to believe maybe one year would be different, but not anymore. 12 years ago, I left with 2 suitcases, a stroller, and a toddler who didn't understand why her dad wasn't coming with us. I was 5 months pregnant with Reed. My then-husband Joel had met someone else, someone less tired, someone more fun. Her name didn't matter. What mattered was starting over. I moved into a 2-bedroom rental on the edge of town, took online real estate courses between midnight bathroom runs and early morning tantrums, and passed my licensing exam 3 weeks after Reed was born. The first sale I made barely covered rent, but it was mine. I wore heels I couldn't afford and knocked on doors until someone opened one. Meanwhile, Celeste hosted brunches. She and Thomas bought a colonial in a gated neighborhood, hosted charity galas, and made Christmas cards that looked like magazine covers. People called her radiant. My mother called her the golden thread that holds us all together. When I showed up to family dinners with spit up on my shoulder and my phone buzzing with client texts, I was just Seren, the one who always seemed tired. I stayed quiet. Not because I didn't feel the difference, but because I didn't want my children to. Until the day Calla asked me if Grandma liked Celeste's kids better. She was 6, sitting on the kitchen floor with markers and a sheet of paper labeled Beach Week Packing List. It had drawings of swimsuits, goggles, and a bucket with a smiley face. I froze, unsure how to answer. "Grandma just has her hands full sometimes," I said, kneeling next to her. "But we don't take up much room," she replied. "We could sleep in sleeping bags." "I don't mind." I told her maybe next year, that we'd find our own waves. And that weekend I drove them to the state park and let them run through the spray where the lake met the sand, pretending the water was salty and the sky went on forever. They believed me then. I just didn't know how many times I'd have to make them believe again. Dinner at my mother's house always came with a side of discomfort. This time it was roast chicken, lemon asparagus, and subtle reminders of where I stood. Celeste sat across from me, swirling her wine like she was waiting for an audience. "We're thinking of remodeling the beach house kitchen next year," she said casually. "The rental one is just so dated. Thomas can't even make espresso properly there." Lorraine nodded thoughtfully. "You've always had such refined taste, Celeste. Not everyone notices those details." Calla reached for her glass of water. I saw the flicker in her eyes. She was old enough now to catch tone, even if she didn't have the words for it. "So, what are you and the kids up to this summer?" Celeste asked, feigning interest. "We're looking at some local places. State parks, a few festivals in town," I said evenly. Celeste offered a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "That's nice. Low-key. Though I guess when you don't have a real job, it's easier to be flexible, right?" The room went quiet. Even Reed looked up from his mashed potatoes. I didn't answer. I didn't argue. I took another bite and helped Owen from his chair like the conversation had ended, but something inside me hardened. Later that night, after I put the kids to bed and folded laundry on the couch, I opened my laptop. Not to scroll or answer client emails. I searched coastal investment properties near Sunset Beach. Pages loaded motels, fixer-uppers, abandoned inns. I didn't know what I was looking for, only that I was done making space where none had ever been offered. The words still rang in my ears, real job. I thought of the late nights, the early showings, the deals closed while Reed slept in the car. I didn't want to explain it anymore. I wanted to build something they couldn't ignore, and I wanted to do it without ever needing their permission. The listing didn't look like much at first. Faded photos, a dated sign that read Sea Glen Inn, and an asking price that seemed too high for something with carpet older than me. But the location was right 10 minutes from the house my mother rented every year, close enough to see the same sunsets, far enough to never need their invitation. I saved the listing. Then I opened a blank spreadsheet. During the day, I still juggled showings, closings, and school pickups. But at night, when the kids were asleep, I stayed up running numbers. I created tabs for renovation costs, projected bookings, licensing requirements. I researched zoning laws. I watched YouTube videos on boutique hospitality management. I remembered things I hadn't let myself dream about in years. I didn't tell anyone, not my coworkers, not my friends, not even Calla, who noticed I was going to bed later and drinking more coffee than usual. One evening, I sketched out a layout for a 2-bedroom suite. A bunk room for kids, built-in shelves for books and board games, a large window overlooking the ocean. I labeled it Family Suite, Calla and Reed, and highlighted the title in yellow. Just seeing their names there on something made me feel like I was building more than a business. I was building proof that we belonged. I reached out to a former client who now ran a construction company, asked for a rough estimate, then to a lender I trusted. Quietly, carefully, I began threading pieces together. There were moments of doubt, usually after midnight, staring at risk projections. But the ache of all those summers past was louder than my fear. By the end of the month, I had a full proposal. No one clapped. No one said they were proud. But I looked at that plan and saw my kids' names at the center of something that couldn't be taken away. We visited the property on a gray Saturday in February. I told the kids we were going to look at something special but didn't explain further. The parking lot was cracked, the paint on the siding curled at the corners, and the front sign hung slightly crooked. Reed scrunched his nose. "It smells old," he said, "like Grandma's attic." I smiled. It's not what it is that matters. It's what it could be. Inside, the air was cold and stale. The furniture looked like it had been picked from a garage sale 20 years ago. But when I pushed open the doors to the deck, the view stole their breath. A wide stretch of empty beach waves crashing in rhythmic bursts, a quiet horizon that didn't judge or exclude. Calla stood quietly beside me. "We get to come here," I nodded. "Not just come here. We get to make it ours." They wandered the halls with fresh eyes. Reed decided one room should be ocean-themed with murals of whales and jellyfish. Calla wanted fairy lights and a reading nook in the corner of the suite. They argued over pool features, slide or waterfall, then agreed an ice cream bar in the restaurant was non-negotiable. I took notes, every idea scribbled into my worn planner. We ended the visit sitting on the floor of what would become the family suite. No beds, no decor, just bare walls and dust, but Calla leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I think it already feels like home." That night, back at our house, they drew pictures of what the resort might look like. Reed's had palm trees and a sign that said Kids Zone, no grown-ups allowed. Calla's had a curved driveway and fireworks above the rooftop deck. Their drawings went on the fridge, right next to the save-the-date magnet for Grandma's beach house trip. I chose thick cream cardstock with a watercolor print of the shoreline and had each envelope hand-addressed. Inside the invitation read, "You are warmly invited to a family weekend at Seabrook Haven, a place built for connection, laughter, and new traditions." I signed each one personally and included details about accommodations, activities, and a gentle note, "All expenses covered. Just bring your stories and your favorite sandals." I mailed over 24 envelopes to cousins, aunts, uncles, even relatives I hadn't seen in years because the beach house had always been too full. I sent one to my father's brother who had quietly drifted away after my parents' divorce. Another to my cousin Nathan, who once told me he stopped coming to family trips because the vibe was too tight. I didn't send one to Lorraine, or to Celeste. It wasn't spite. It was clarity. Calla found out while helping me sort RSVPs at the kitchen table. "Aren't we inviting Grandma and Aunt Celeste?" I paused, then folded an envelope slowly. "Not this time." She blinked. "But they always do the beach trips." "They do," I said gently. "And they'll have theirs this summer too. But this one's different. It's for people who haven't had a chance to come before." Calla looked down at the list of names, tracing her finger over one. "Is Cousin Elena coming?" She already said yes. Reed, who'd been building a tower from RSVP cards, looked up. "Are we gonna show them the secret path to the tide pools? We can show them everything." I smiled. A week later, my inbox filled with replies. Yeses, filled with joy, surprise, even gratitude. One cousin wrote, "I can't believe you did this. Thank you for thinking of us." I printed that one and taped it beside the fridge. Right next to Reed's newest drawing, a map of the resort with a big red X over the suite labeled Family Only. The call came on a Tuesday evening, just after I'd finished reviewing paint swatches for the pool deck furniture. The kids were upstairs arguing over whose turn it was to pick a movie. My phone buzzed with Celeste's name. I considered letting it go to voicemail. I didn't. "Miranda," she said sharply, skipping any greeting. Is it true I didn't ask what she meant? I waited. "This event. This little resort thing you're doing. You're inviting everyone except your own mother and sister. Are you serious?" I stayed quiet. Emily heard from Nicole's daughter. "They're all going to stay at some fancy place you bought and you didn't even tell us. You're tearing the family apart." I took a breath, kept my voice even. "The family's been apart for a long time, Celeste. You just never noticed." "That's not fair," she snapped. "You could have come to the beach house if you'd made more of an effort. You always acted like you didn't want to be included." I let out a small laugh. I acted like I was tired of begging. There was a pause just long enough for the weight to settle. For 15 years, I said you and Mom packed up for beach vacations and told me there wasn't room. But there was room for you. Your kids, even a nanny. Just never for mine. Her voice cracked. It wasn't personal. It was exactly personal. And now that I've built something of my own, you want to talk about inclusion. She exhaled sharply, the fury shifting. "You're punishing us." "No," I said quietly. "I'm finally prioritizing us." "That's different." She didn't reply. Just the faint sound of her breathing on the other end, shallow and stunned. "I hope the kids have a great summer," I added. "Ours will be." I ended the call before she could say anything else and sat there in the soft glow of the kitchen light, listening to the sound of my children's laughter drifting down the stairs. Guests began arriving late Friday afternoon cars pulling into the freshly sealed lot with wide eyes and curious smiles. I stood near the entrance with name tags and iced tea, watching arms open for long overdue hugs and cousins rediscover one another after years of distant group texts. By dinner, the restaurant buzzed with stories and side jokes picked up where they'd left off laughter, echoing off reclaimed wood walls Calla had helped choose. Reed gave a proud tour of the property, pointing out the dolphin-watching deck and the snack bar menu he helped name. They called him the little manager, and he wore the title like a crown. Calla, always quieter, took her cousin Madison by the hand and led her to the family suite. "Mom made this for us," she said, voice low but sure. "Not just me and Reed. All of us." I watched them from a distance, standing at the edge of the hallway. I'd seen her shy away from rooms like that before, rooms full of belongings she hadn't been given. Now, she was the one opening the door. That night, we lit a bonfire on the beach. Uncle Devin strummed a guitar, someone passed out marshmallows, and Reed fell asleep in a pile of towels beside my chair. Calla rested her head on my shoulder. "They like it here," she whispered. "They love it," I said, pressing a kiss to her temple. The next morning, I passed by the front desk and found a thank you note tucked into the guest book. It read, This feels like what family should have been all along. No signature, just a flower doodled in the corner. I left it there. On Sunday, as the final guests packed up their cars and promised to return next year, I stood on the deck with a coffee in hand and the sun warming my face. Behind me, Calla was helping change sheets in the family suite while Reed swept sand from the front steps. I knew the moment I saw her car clean silver, too polished for sand roads, that she hadn't come to admire the landscaping. Lorraine stepped out slowly, clutching her handbag like armor. She didn't look angry. She looked lost. "Miranda," she said, her voice thinner than usual. I didn't know where the entrance was. I walked toward her without offering a smile. "It's marked." She took in the main building, the fresh paint, the hanging ferns along the porch rail. "You really did all this?" "I did." She hesitated. "It's more than I expected." I nodded and motioned her inside. We walked through the lobby, the family suite, the path to the beach. She didn't speak much, just looked at the photos on the walls, the labeled key hooks behind the desk, the kids' drawings framed by the front entrance. When we reached the end of the boardwalk, she turned to me. "This must have taken everything. It took enough." She pulled her sweater tighter around her. "I didn't realize how serious you were about building something. You never asked." There was silence. Not cold, but careful. "I heard from Celeste," she said. "She's still upset. Thinks you're trying to divide the family." I met her eyes. "I'm not dividing anything. I'm creating something separate. For my children. For myself." She looked out at the water. "Would it be all right if I brought the kids by next week for a visit just for the afternoon?" I considered it. For the kids, I said finally yes. But not as a guest of honor. Not this time. She nodded once, and for a moment her gaze softened. I walked her back to the car, and as she pulled away, Reed came running down the boardwalk barefoot and breathless. "Mom, Calla says we need your opinion on the new porch pillows." Emily, Celeste's oldest, asked if she could work at the resort the following summer. "Just a few weeks," she said in her email. "I want to earn my own money." I said yes. She folded towels, refilled snack stations, and wiped down pool chairs with more focus than I expected. When she left, she gave me a hug and said, "This place feels different, in a good way." Lorraine began stopping by every few weeks during her own beach visits. She brought cookies once, sat quietly on the porch another time, but never offered advice or opinions. For the first time, she entered a space I built without trying to rearrange it. I spent more mornings with coffee in hand, more evenings watching Reed chase sand crabs while Calla read with her feet buried in warm dunes. The business stabilized, staff settled in, and for once I wasn't waiting for the next blow. The family suite became the most requested room on the property, always booked, always buzzing. We started calling it the strong room among ourselves, not because it was the biggest or fanciest, but because it held everything they said we never had. The email came in mid-June. Celeste wrote that their usual beach house fell through and the kids were hoping to finally see what all the fuss was about. She asked if I had anything available, even just for a few nights. I read it twice. Then I clicked reply. "Hi, Celeste. Thanks for reaching out. We're fully booked for the summer, including the family suite. I hope you enjoy your beach house week." Serene. No bitterness. No performance. Just the truth. I printed a copy of that reply, folded it neatly, and slid it behind the glass of the sign at the front desk. The sign Calla helped design last winter. It read, "For everyone who was told no room, this place is yours now." Later that evening, as I refilled the lobby candy jar, a little girl tugged her mother's hand and pointed to it. "Does that mean me?" Her mother smiled. "Yes, baby, it means you.